Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first of 2021, the January 5th, 2021 Planning Board meeting for the town of Litchfield. Happy New Year. Can we all please stand to this Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. It's like we have a quorum this evening. Ron isn't here and Kevin isn't here this evening. Appointment of alternates, we don't need to do that. Roll call of members present. Michael Croto, Chair.
Kimberly Queenan, Vice Chair.
Josh Smith, member.
Kate Stevens, member.
James Buffetti, member.
Okay, welcome everybody. I hope everyone had a nice Christmas and a great New Year. Let's hope 2021 is better than 2020, I guess. Public input on non-agenda items. I'll open the floor for public input on non-agenda items are not on the agenda for this evening. Is there anyone with public input?
Mr. Chair, I don't see any members of the public attending tonight.
Okay, thank you, John. So I will close public input on non-agenda items and we'll go to number 1 this evening, which is zoning ordinance hearing on conservation open space development clarification, section 575.0.0. We all had an opportunity to take a look at the conservation open space development, the amended sections. Jay, did you want to lead us in on this this evening? This is a public hearing.
He's muted.
Jay, you're muted.
Sorry.
Oh.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
I
Yes.
can hear you now.
Awesome. Thank you. I should have unmuted myself before I minimized the screen. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
I'm showing a draft of the ordinance. So this is a little bit different than you've seen previously. Rather than, done with the red line, this is the format that we produce for the voters. So just basically for a reminder for the board and for the members of the public who are watching this evening, the main intent of the modifications proposed for the Conservation Open Space Development Ordinance are to clarify the types of open space that are contemplated, the uses that those spaces can be put to, and how they are to be managed and owned. And the reason for this primarily is there was some confusion, which we'll see as we roll through it, because of the different terms that were used and the for open space and the different ways in which they were described. So just moving through it briefly, as you can see language and strikeout under objectives. There aren't too many changes here. Mainly it was linking the term common open space in subsection D, and you'll see the reasons for that in just a moment. Moving on to the next section, there were minor changes in most of the sections. One of the areas that we wanted to clarify was when public access was desired for open space and when it didn't make sense. And one of the reasons, the way the ordinance is currently written implied that public access was always required for designated open space, but that was inconsistent with some of the uses such as active agriculture. So in this section here, again, we identify where public access to designated open space is appropriate. Moving on down to the next subsection under uses here, again, you can see we where there we're using the terms common area, conservation land, open space, and or public open land. These were all different terms that were used in the ordinance that were confusing. Those have simply been eliminated and they were just replaced in this section with designated open space. And just for clarification, designated open space is the space that is dedicated to conservation that is required as a part of the ordinance. And that's why the term is being used. Again, in this next section, you can see designated open space rather than the term open space as being used just to give it greater clarity. Again, you see the term designated open space may be permitted. We eliminated the reference to by special permit. Developing an open space subdivision is always a special process. There was no need to reference another permitting process that actually didn't exist. Moving on down, subsection G, this was where, again, we clarify that in designated open space, public access may be required. As at the discretion of the planning board, it is not necessarily always required. Moving on down to the next subsection, again, we're trying to achieve greater clarity here by being consistent in the language. You can see here the term green space was used. That didn't show up previously. That was eliminated. Once again, in subsection B, we're clarifying public access. We did add the words that it's protected in perpetuity. Again, it's clear that it's at the discretion of the planning board. And then finally, there was another subsection added at the end and that provides for public ownership. Private ownership of designated open space. And that could be through a corporation, a trust, or some other private entity, so long as it's consistent with the purposes of the ordinance in that it relates to agriculture, forestry, outdoor recreation, or some other approved use of open space. So that's pretty much a quick summary of all of the changes that were proposed. Again, these have really been proposed to bring greater clarity to the ordinance because of the number of different types of open space that were referenced. So we've really reduced that to designated open space and common land. And again, it brings clarity to the way in which the land can be owned and used.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Anybody have any questions for Jay? I think it looks great. I think it looks good. If nobody has any, you have a question?
I
Kim? I'm
really not a
sorry.
question. I don't know if it's a punctuation error or the way I'm interpreting it. If we could look at page 2, it's 575.7.0, section D. So 575.7.0, section D.
Yes.
It says portions of the designated open space may be permitted to be used for the following period. The planning board may impose. I was wondering if we could say portions of the designated open space may be permitted to be used for the following, comma, where the planning board may impose specific criteria. It just looked like that first sentence was saying there.
You're right, it is awkward. Or we could insert the word uses. So we could change it to say, because that implies you want a colon here and then the uses following. So it could be changed in the way you suggested, or we could simply say portions of designated open space may be permitted to be used for the following uses, and then the planning board may impose specific criteria. That might make it clearer.
Yep, either one. I just thought that first sentence was more of a statement, not.
You're right. Yeah, I
Either
think
one's
that
fine
should be
if we do that.
clarified.
Yeah.
So in terms of to be used for the following, then would we like put A, B, and C, or 1, 2, 3, what those uses are?
You got 1 and 2 there, right? See, they're
So-
below it.
You've already got them. It's just in
Talking about
between the
recreation.
following and 1 and 2, you've got this statement, the planning board, and that is a little awkward, the way that's structured.
Okay.
So I said we could say could be used for the following, comma, where the planning board may impose specific criteria or restrictions.
And the planning board may.
Or, yeah, whichever, but
Yeah,
just,
that would work.
and then I think I had another one on wording also, but I'll let you finish that note.
Okay.
So again, I'm not questioning the, you know, what's in it. It's just more the punctuation.
We should make it as clear as
That's
we
what I
can.
think you're saying. All right,
Yeah.
this is the I guess page 3. I guess my page 4 is blank. 575.8.0, the last one on the list. It's B.
Yes.
I think I got halfway through. I think it says designated open space shall be permanently protected in perpetuity by a conservation easement, period. That was fine. After approval by town council, all legal documents, comma, and subject to the approval of the planning board designated open space. I just don't know if something's missing there.
There's a comma after planning board.
Okay, so after the planning board, comma, designated open space shall be conveyed and conservation easement granted to. All right, so is there a comma there? That's what I was questioning.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know
you scratched out discretion and you left the comma, right?
it's hard to see, but the comma does remain after
Okay,
discussion.
that was it. I just said, should there be a comma there?
Yeah.
All right, and then you added number 4 on B, right, for private parties?
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure. So we have number 1 is, you're talking about the town can own it.
Right.
Number
Or
2,
its designated.
nonprofit can own it.
Mhm.
Number 3, a trust or, you know, everybody who lives in that division can own it, right?
Right.
And number 4, you said a private party. Okay. I just was just questioning that. The only other comment I had, which I thought was odd, was on the first page, but I think I changed my mind. I think it's okay. But I just want to make sure everyone else agrees. Page 1, 575.2, you had all A through F objectives, which were fine. But when I first read it, I thought F could overrule the rest of them. Like, if people went right to this, they would literally say, we can use it for, you know, alternative, you know, homes, varying age and income and need. I guess if they're attracted to this, and want to use it for that, they could, because it still adhere to the conservation rules. I just didn't want that to be the magnet that everybody just came in and say, we just want to do it for number F, you know, that it overruled the rest. But I think it has to go with the rest of A, B, C, D, and E.
Yeah, I would say I think you have to read them together.
Yeah, I read it by like standalone. I said, well, they're just going to go for F and, you know, forget the rest of A through E. But I guess it's okay, because as long as people know it's all the objectives are met, not just F. And I think by default, if they pick open space development, they have to adhere to the other rules.
That would certainly be my view.
Or we can say while maintaining, you know, the balance of the conservation definition. I didn't know if we wanted to do anything with it or, I think by default it would do that. But I just want to make sure nobody's coming in here and thinking, oh, we're just going to do open space because we want to have alternate housing opportunities that meet the needs of residents by age and income, you know. Just cram more houses in there. Kind of mentality. And I don't care, I mean, I care if they do that, but if they do it legally, but they follow the rest of this ordinance, it's okay.
Yeah, Tim, I think that's limited by the minimum lot requirements, and I mean, we already see it's not happening right now. That we had, you know, developers tell us that it's not, it doesn't help with their profits if they kind of cram more people in there.
I know, but I think what I'm thinking in the back of my mind is, you know, how we're trying to find workforce housing, alternate housing, you know, cheaper ways to build homes on smaller pieces of land. So I don't know if that would be an attractive to a developer, which it might be, but as long as they adhere to the rest of the ordinance and don't think it just applies to F, you know, that's all my concern was.
Yeah, I think it's covered everywhere else with the minimum lot requirements and everything.
Yep, that's why I said I changed my mind. But when I first read it, I went, oh, I'm just going to think F is fine. And I'm going to pick that because I can pick more houses in a smaller lot.
Unless you wanted to say to provide alternative housing opportunities that meet the needs of the, somehow say to the language like A through E above, and the need of residents of varying age, income, and need, unless, you know, to make it inclusive.
Yeah, I was going to just do something like while maintaining the balance between, you know, or like you said, A through E. Do you see why I thought that could be?
Yeah, I see where, I think I see where you're going, yeah.
You could amend it to say, to be clearer, add the sentence or the phrase consistent with objectives A through E above.
Perfect. And I'm happy. I know, no loophole.
Hi,
Oh,
sorry I'm late.
was that James?
Was that
Was
Ron?
that James? Did we just lose James on the?
No, it's Ron. I just signed in.
Ron.
I think James's picture fell off the screen. Okay.
I'm here.
Yeah,
His picture's gone.
It only shows some of it at the bottom.
I see.
Is that okay if we just kind of,
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't want the lawyer to say, it says right there that we can meet the needs of, and then we go with class A through E. All right, that was it.
Easily done.
all right, at this time, because this is a public hearing tonight for members of the public to comment, I'm going to open it up to public hearing on the conservation open space development, the zoning ordinance, and as to section 575.0.0. Is there any members of the public, either present or on the remotely, who wish to comment on this zoning change, the ordinance?
Mr. Chair, there are no members of the public joined.
Okay. Hearing no members of the public being present, and since there was nobody here in town hall, I'll close public input on this this ordinance and go back to the board. So Jay, correct me if I'm wrong. So is this going to be, this will be presented at is this presented at the deliberative session?
No, this would actually, we would need to
Part
send
of
this,
our chapter.
we'll need to send this to a second public hearing.
Okay,
So I think if the board is satisfied with the language tonight, then I think the appropriate motion would be to send it to second public hearing as amended.
okay, all right. Very good. All right, so if there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion to move that this be, this item of the zoning ordinance hearing conservation open space development be moved to a second public hearing next meeting, which is what date? The 19th.
I'd like to make a motion that this zoning ordinance for the conservation open space development be sent to a second public hearing on January 19th with section 575.2 F referring to A through E above. And with the amendment that 575.7 item D adds the comma where the planning board may oppose to connect the sentences.
Okay,
Second.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Thank you. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 0. Okay, great. All right, the next item is the discussion of the accessory dwelling units ADU zoning section 507.0. And I will turn it over to Jay.
So this came out of a discussion that we had at our last meeting on generally on affordable housing, workforce housing. What are the options for allowing for some alternative housing types? And I think we all appreciated that that's a longer and more in-depth discussion that we need to have, and that the window to propose something for the coming town meeting is too narrow to look at something more comprehensive. But one of the things that did come up was looking at the possibility of allowing detached accessory dwelling units. Currently, we allow attached. and they are allowed by right so long as they meet the criteria in the ordinance. So just as a preface, I took a look at, and I know Kim has looked at this also, but I did share, I'm not necessarily going to show it now, but I did share a survey that was done by the Office of Strategic Initiatives and that's a broader survey of land use regulations across the state and all municipalities, but specifically which communities have an accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which is almost all of them, and who allows detached and how they allow it. So I did provide that. I looked at some different examples of some of the communities in our region. To try and come up with some different ways. My initial approach was really to just do a very, very simple intervention. But as I thought about it and I looked at the way other communities were doing it, most communities, it is either a conditional use permit or it's a special exception. And so I thought about that. I always like to take the easiest path, but when it comes to kind of the challenge of how do you protect the single family character of a residential area, that implies some level of review. So I am certainly not wedded to this approach. There are many ways to go about it. But what I thought I would run through is at least one option that we could use to achieve allowing that within some parameters. So just starting off, what you see here is the existing accessory dwelling unit ordinance. And, clearly the first change is under definitions, which now say attached. And so basically the suggestion here is you simply add, you take out the or here, you put an or here, or accessory, and basically that will just now read, dwelling unit accessory means a residential unit that is within, attached, or accessory to a single family dwelling. That seemed pretty straightforward. Moving on down to the performance standards, these are the performance standards that all accessory dwelling units have to meet. Again, all these changes are related specifically to clarifying what applies to an attached versus a detached unit. So again, as you can see here, the word one accessory dwelling unit within the single family dwelling is changed to per. Under F, the requirement that there be an internal door, again, would only refer to attached ADUs, and attached ADUs will have the same house number, mailbox, or utility service as the primary dwelling unit. And I'll come back to that point in just a moment. Everything else stayed the same, except that now we have a section, conditional use permits, and this is the section that allows the planning board to grant a conditional use permit for detached accessory dwelling unit in the residential district. So in addition to the performance standards that you have to meet above, and again, not necessarily wedded to all of these, a lot of these I gleaned from different ordinances, but that the ADU would be located to the side and rear of the property. I think that makes sense. You don't want it in the front, even if it meets the setback requirements. I'm also not wedded to this. Many ordinances do require that if you have a detached ADU, that the lot is larger than the minimum lot size. So that's certainly something that we could talk about. What I suggested here was 125%, so it'd be an acre and a quarter instead of an acre. A detached ADU should not contain more than 2 bedrooms. Again, that's pretty common. Realistically, given the size requirements, it's hard to get to more than that. This was, again, I struggled with how do you come up with requirements that really ensure that you're maintaining that single family character. So here it simply, because there's going to be a planning board review, it simply states that the parking and driveway access for the ADU shall be provided in a location and manner that maintains a single family appearance of the property. That avoids trying to come up with too many requirements on how it looks or what the distances are. The next one is related, that there would be no additional curb cuts provided for the ADU. This, again, this came out of a conversation that we had previously about, the detached ADU would have to be developed with an existing barn, garage, or similar outbuilding, or designed to be consistent with the character and appearance of, customary accessory buildings. I think last time there was a suggestion that it would have to be an existing building. And the challenge really with that is, so, you build an existing garage or whatever, and then you come back next month and propose the ADU. It didn't seem to, the timing issue there, seemed to me to be a bit of a challenge. End of the day, I think what this would do is it allows you to do it within an existing outbuilding, or you have to design it in a way that makes it, has a similar appearance to a customary secondary accessory building. Again, we can discuss any one of these, of course. This is also not uncommon. This basically requires that or prohibits anybody from subdividing the ADU from the primary dwelling unit on its own lot. Obviously, this would apply in a scenario where somebody had the sufficient acreage, but we wouldn't want to see an ADU. An ADU is specifically supposed to be accessory to a primary dwelling unit, so you don't want to subdivide it apart. The next section is also similar in that this would prohibit someone from condoizing the property, turning the ADU and or the principal dwelling into condominium units. And then again, there is, I should say, to ensure compliance, and this probably should be clearer because this should apply to G and H. But to assure compliance with this requirement, there would be a covenant that would have to be filed, or recorded that runs with the property that prohibits those conversions. So that's it. Again, there are many different ways that you could do it. End of the day, it really did feel to me as though there should be some level of oversight, whether that is the planning board reviewing it or the zoning board reviewing it. I will say in some cases it's a special exception rather than a conditional use permit. So it could go either way. My sense was that it made sense for the planning board to review it because the planning board is already reviewing subdivisions and residential developments generally, including multifamily. It seemed that that was a better fit, but again, it could go either way. The other value in having it as a conditional use permit, same thing would apply to a special exception, is it does mean that it's going to be at a public meeting. There would be notification and there'd be opportunity for any abutters who may have a concern or an interest, to participate in the process. But obviously, this is intended for discussion and, open to questions, comments, or alternative thoughts.
Hey, Jay, this is Jim.
Yes.
So in the definition section, 507.03, so you use residential living unit that is within, attached, or accessory. But then you talk about, later on, you talk about detached. Why did you use accessory and not detached?
There's no good reason. It would make more sense to put detached.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay.
I think I would just replace that word accessory with detached would be clearer.
Great. And then just a comment, so I think this is great. And thanks for putting this together. For the detached section 506.06, I have some concerns with B, that it would have to be comprised of at least 125% of the minimum lot area. I'm thinking about the conversations we've had recently about affordable housing and other kinds of things in Litchfield. I don't know what the reasons would be for putting that 125% requirement, but I would be inclined not to be supportive of that.
Jim, I was going to have the same feedback.
Yeah. And I would agree in that if you can meet the requirement under J above that it complies with DS requirements for subsurface wastewater management, I don't think that that's necessary. I did show it because it's common. I should say I did see it in other ordinances, but that certainly could be removed. It would definitely be a deterrent.
Yeah, I agree.
Would that be a conflict with the other ordinance you mentioned, that 310 dimensional requirement? If we removed it, is it implied that it's going to meet that 310?
It still would meet 310 because 310 requires the acre.
Requires, I didn't hear you, requires the what?
The acre.
Okay, acre, yes.
This is in addition to what 310 requires.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay, perfect, yeah.
I think this looks great. I think everything, like, you covered more bases than I had thought of. So I think this looks great. Thank you very much.
So if there is interest in pursuing this, we do have time to put this to a public hearing at our next meeting.
I would certainly be in favor of doing that.
Okay. Everybody else?
I do have questions, though.
You would have a question? Okay.
I have
Well,
a few
this is the
questions, but if anyone wants to go before me, go ahead. So this would cover an item, the detached would be if somebody builds a garage and then all of a sudden they have there's a second floor in the garage, so somebody would want to maybe move in there. Is that covered under this, the detached?
Yes, it could be a second floor. Yes.
And they would have had to meet, like, you know, again, this is the olden days for me, but number of bedrooms total with the septic tank, all of that is already figured out before this happens, right?
Yes.
Okay. And there's a separate door. I want to read what you said about the doors here, because a detached one would not have an indoor door, right?
Right.
And you can't go through a garage to get somewhere because the fire department doesn't let that happen, supposedly, right?
Well, and this is a
I think we have to
detached.
look at that.
This is the detached structure, so you couldn't
So
have.
you can't go. Okay. All right. So that's good. All right. All right. That was one of my questions. And do you mind if I just go down the document just in order? 507.02. We're still going to keep with its own owner occupied, because we're going to still have that happen.
No change is proposed to that section
Okay. And it has to be a family member or a family caregiver. We're still sticking with that.
in one of the units. Yes.
Okay. All right. The 500 feet, so I'm on 507.04B. The 500 feet or 800 feet, that was like a state. I remember that was a criteria from the state, right?
Yeah. No change is proposed there.
And it says gross living area above ground. Does that mean somebody cannot live in a basement if it's done over? I'm on 507.04B.
That does say that. Yeah. I mean, we didn't propose any changes to this, but you are right in that it does say above ground.
So I don't know if people, can you have an accessory dwelling unit in a basement?
Well, I think you can, but if it says it's incidental and subordinate in extent to the primary dwelling unit and dwelling unit approved for subject land and is not less than 500 feet or more than 800 feet of gross living area above ground.
Do we want to leave that above ground there? I don't know, unless you think basement can qualify.
So I'm going to reread it and make sure I understand it. It's the accessory dwelling unit is incidental and subordinate in extent and use to the primary dwelling and dwelling unit approved for the subject parcel of the land and is not less than 500 feet or more than 800 feet of gross living area above ground. So you can't exceed 800 square feet of living area above ground. So this would allow a basement.
The way I'm interpreting this is the dwelling unit has to be above ground.
It can't exceed 800 square feet of gross living area above ground.
Well, what if the accessory dwelling unit's in the basement? Is that considered above ground? Am I misinterpreting this? Am I misinterpreting this? I don't know if we need the word above ground.
So I'm not sure we do either, but I think what this is trying to say is that you could convert a basement or a significant portion of a basement, because if you're looking at a single family home,
Yeah.
you're not going to see that. I think what this is trying to do is limit the size of additions above ground. That's how I would read it. Whether we need it or not is a different question, but that's how I would read it. But I don't know if anybody else sees it differently.
Could we remove the words above ground? Just say living area, period?
Well, that would change the maximum allowed square footage. Because I think this is allowing, unlimited below ground, essentially, and only a maximum of 800 feet above ground. That's how I read it.
So you're saying the footprint of the basement can't be more than 800, 500 to 800 feet. Has to be in that parameter, right?
If you remove the above ground, that's what that says. If you leave it in there, it doesn't have a limit on the basement square footage.
I just think it should be, and it's just me, but it should be 500 to 800 feet no matter where it is, whether it's above ground, below ground, or detached.
Well, I think the bigger reason was how it looks from the outside. We wanted to keep it looking like a single family home. So why does it matter if they have more square footage in the basement?
They may. Basements are sometimes longer than the accessory dwelling unit above it.
Right. I'm saying, why would we limit that?
I guess this to me just means above ground means you can only have an accessory dwelling unit above ground. That's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, that's not how I interpret it.
No.
All right, so I'm wrong. Okay. I'll leave it. No problem.
Well, then I have a question. Can they have more than 800 square feet of ADU? Because in the office, we're telling them 500 to 800. is the limit.
Right.
So it's not less than 500 or more than 800.
Right. But are you saying that they could have any amount below ground?
That's how I would read this, yes.
Yeah, that's how I'm reading it.
Yep, I agree.
So do we have to say above ground is this, below ground a basement? I don't know.
I would leave the underground. I would leave it as it is.
So then they can have as much as they want below ground, below grade?
Yep.
But is that the definition of the state of New Hampshire had a law of what an accessory dwelling unit was? And I thought it was like 500 feet to 800 feet.
I'll double check, but I don't believe the state law puts a limit, but I'll double check.
While you're on state law, could I make a comment on 50702? Okay. Michael?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I thought the state law changed. It did not have to be a family member anymore.
I'll double check that as well. I believe that you can limit one of the units to a family member, but I will double check that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Joan. I forgot about that piece. I was thinking that we were going to remove the limitation on it only being family members or caregivers.
We can certainly do that.
because this matrix here, remember the one I created from the data that Jay sent out? Some of these towns don't have ADUs are required to be owner occupied.
That's right.
So I thought Joan was right too. I thought it didn't have to be a family member. It was a caregiver, and then it came into rent, and we all just dodged that one. Remember, we don't care. We're not talking about that. So, but I thought it could be a non-family member.
Yeah, because you could rent it. That was the case. with the
Right.
state.
Well, I thought we do have it that one of the units needs to be owner occupied.
Right, owner occupied, but not, right.
Yeah, so it says, for the purpose of providing the owner occupant of a single family dwelling flexibility in living arrangements and to provide alternative housing for an owner occupant's family member or caregiver. It seems to me to be,
That gets confusing, though.
it is confusing.
So we're just gonna check if it had to be a family member or not, right? I didn't think it had to, but.
Well, I mean, we can amend this to be clear that it doesn't have to be.
Um,
So we could simply say, for the sole purpose of providing, I mean, we can even remove the word owner in the second sentence and say, so the sole purpose of providing the occupant of a single family dwelling flexibility in living arrangements and to provide alternative housing. Period.
I think it'd be worth just looking at what other towns have done with that language. That might help us.
I would agree.
So we can just take out the owner occupied family member or family caregiver. And just
Right.
alternative housing, period.
Yep.
Okay.
That'll work.
Anything else, Kim?
I might, let's see. Well, this will depend on whether we decide, that data that I sent out, that summary on an email. If you look at Litchfield and you look at the columns as ADUs required to be owner occupied, right now we do. We have true, we do, right? That goes, I'm looking at 50704D, the owner of the property shall occupy either the primary or secondary dwelling unit, so that'll depend what we'd select over here, whether we're
Well,
gonna,
you want the owner to be there somewhere, but not.
okay, so you want them to be there, all right.
Yeah.
That's the way the state had, I don't know if the state had made it owner occupied, but I think that we had changed it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure whatever we decide's in sync with the ordinance, that's
Right.
all. All right,
Would that not be conflicting to what we just took out?
yeah, we left it open, you're right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you want alternative.
Here we left it open because we didn't want the implication that because if you go back to 50702, it references an owner occupant's family member or family caregiver, which seems to restrict it more than saying that the owner has to occupy one of the two units. It suggests that the secondary unit has to be occupied by a family member or caregiver.
Okay.
Number 8 on 50704. A required secondary access shall be from the rear or the side of the structure. All right, let me think about that. Why did I write a note? Work for detached also. So for a detached, well, it doesn't matter. The rear or the side. What if the detached has the door in the front? So if you have a detached garage that happens to have two garage and a door in the center of, the two doors.
I'm sorry, which section?
507.04, number H, or letter H. It says any required secondary access shall be from the rear or the side of the primary structure. Is this a detached one, or is this just attached? Because if it's a
I think those are attached.
Yeah, I think that should be clarified to say for attached units.
okay, all right, because I asked if it was for detailed also. So this
Yeah,
one should be
that
for
makes
attached.
sense.
Okay, so we'll fix that. All right, let's see. All right, I'm in section 507.06. I guess before we talk about conditional use permits, you wanted it to apply to residential districts. I didn't know if that was the only district. Do we have some that are mixed use or can be agricultural and residential? I don't know. I didn't know if it just, I guess I want to back up.
That's a good question. Can they be in the mixed use?
Can it be in a mixed use district? I wasn't sure.
I don't believe that our ordinance allows that now. the accessory dwelling unit section is within the residential district section. So it would be my thinking that we don't allow detached units in the commercial districts.
Okay, so currently it's only in there, right?
Yeah, I think it specifies it here.
Okay.
In the residential district.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if we had districts that were combined, it could be multiple districts. Yeah.
Because we do allow mixed use in the commercial district, but it only allows one unit. So at this point, at least that mixed use option doesn't allow for an accessory dwelling unit. And we also don't allow accessory dwelling units for multifamily.
Okay, that's right. Okay, that was just, okay, thank you. So that's okay. I guess before I go on with your conditional use permits, well, when I did that little matrix I mailed out to everybody, there were three, on the last column, there were three items that it could be, it said owner occupied ADUs allowed as either as of right by conditional use permit or special exception. Can you go over what those three are? What is an as of right? What is a special exception, and what is the conditional use permit? Because you seem to be wanting to pick conditional use permit.
Right. So as of right simply means if they meet the requirements, they pull a building permit. There is no additional level of the land use board review. So it's not reviewed by the planning board. It's not reviewed by the zoning board. It's strictly, they pull the permit. Under a conditional use permit, a conditional use permit is, very similar to a special exception, but the main difference is that, well, first of all, if you meet the conditions, you can do it, of course, but it's under the jurisdiction of the planning board. So under the conditional use permit option, an applicant would come to the planning board. We actually have a conditional use permit application form. So they would fill out that form. They would come to the planning board. Really similar to what happens with a home occupation. There would be a review. There would be a butter notification. They would submit a plan. The planning board would go through this criteria and decide whether or not to grant it. A special exception is really very similar, and the ordinance has examples of both. And this could be, proposed as a special exception. The big difference there is it would go to the zoning board. They would be reviewing this criteria and deciding whether or not to grant the special exception. In both cases, there would be a butter notification, and it would be done at a public meeting. The reason why I felt that it made sense as a conditional use permit was simply because of the familiarity of the planning board in approving residential developments. But it could be a special exception by the zoning board as well.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know there were two different boards. All right, very good. Okay, so I'm in 50706A, and you now say a detached ADU shall be located in the side or the rear yard of the property. But again, if it's a detached garage, maybe two garages and a door in the middle, and it happens to be the front. I don't know. I just don't know if locking inside and rear of the property, or maybe they're not supposed to go through a garage. I don't know. So see how you have that there, 507?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you mean.
What if the door's in the front of the detached property?
Yeah, I think she means if there's a garage, how usually there's a door.
In the
In
center
the
of the
middle when you
garage?
walk in.
Like you have two garage doors, and sometimes there's a center between the doors?
This section doesn't reference where the doors are located. It simply says it has to be in the side yard or the rear yard rather than the front yard.
Oh, what am I thinking? Okay. Oh, the side or the rear of the property. Oh, never mind. I thought I must be having some kind of doors on my mind here. All right, 2 bedrooms, fine, you answered that. We made a joke about heated sheds, but I'm looking at F. Nobody can live in a heated shed, I'm assuming, but by our code. I've never seen that.
Yeah, you would still have to meet code.
Yeah, so that was kind of just verifying. I heard that somewhere.
I have a question on F. What about mini houses? They wouldn't be allowed? Like 200 square foot houses? Trailer things they're building these days?
Well, you have to be, at least under the current ordinance, it has to be a minimum of 500 square feet, so you couldn't go that small.
Okay.
It sounds like it only needs to look like a garage. So as long as you build it so it looks like a shed, you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, a garage, a shed, a barn, something like that.
So you're saying sheds could qualify if there was a house in a shed?
Well, except
It has to
that,
pass code, but.
well, also, it has to be still a minimum of 500 square feet. It can't be less than 500 square feet.
Big shed and a bathroom, I'm hoping.
Right, so it would have to be a big shed, and yes, it would have to have a bathroom.
Okay. All right, no, you've answered my questions.
I think that goes more towards character, right? In terms of the appearance. of the
Yes.
structure.
The single family.
Yeah.
So this matrix that you gave us the data for here, I passed it out for the 13 towns and NRPC.
Right,
It looks like we all have zoning ordinances for ADUs. And it looks like 5 towns have detached ADUs right now that we could maybe look at their ordinances if we wanted a reference, right?
definitely.
And then the next column is requiring the owner to actually live in there, one of the units. I don't know if we're deciding that tonight. And then what kind of owner occupied is it? And it seems like it's conditional use permit. I think everyone likes that, what Jay recommended, right?
Right. So you understand that the conditional use applies to the planning board versus the
Yes,
special,
yeah.
which.
So I don't know, like, because it's as of now or as of right. But if we're going to decide tonight, if we even have to, is it going to stay as of right or is it going to be
Just the detached.
CUP because of the way he wrote up the ordinance?
Just the detached. would be-
Yeah,
For detached, right?
Right. There's no change to, attached units.
Oh, we're going to leave those the way they are? Well, you're going to look in the ownership part.
Yeah, the only thing we're going to change with regard that will apply to attached units is the purpose statement in 50702.
right, which we talked about.
But what about the below grade question?
The what question?
Does that apply to detached?
She's talking about
attached?
50704B.
Right.
50704.
We were talking about the 500.
Oh, the footage, yeah.
I didn't think there was a consensus to removing the below, the above ground requirement. I could be wrong.
So that applies to both,
That
detached.
applies to both. That's right.
Thanks.
When I look at that matrix of the 13 towns, if you look at Amherst and you look at Pelham, they have different rules for attached versus detached.
Yes.
I don't know if that applies to Litchfield or not. Is it going to be,
It does, and in fact, some of the requirements that I used in, adapted for 50706 came from those ordinances. So what I did was I took a look at other ordinances that allowed detached units and looked at the different types of requirements that they imposed and the different ways that they did it, which informed kind of the language here.
so we'll be the same as Amherst, and we would be Amherst then. If it's attached, it's as of right, and if it's detached, it's conditional use permit.
The requirements aren't exactly the same as Amherst, but a similar approach, yes. In some communities, both attached and detached are, require a special exception or a conditional use permit.
And what would Litchfield be? Are we going to be as?
Well, we can decide that. Do we
That's what I
wanna-
mean. Okay, so
do we
we're-
want
that-
to be both for conditional use, or do you want to switch it, or?
Yeah, right now, the way this is written, attached ADUs are as of right if you meet the requirements. Detached requires conditional use permit.
Yep, then that matches his ordinance here, what he wrote up. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So we would match Amherst on that. And we're still, And we're still deciding whether we are owner occupied or not. I guess is that staying the same? The column here, ADUs required to be owner occupied, or is that what you're still researching that?
Well, it's right now it's under section 50704D.
Yep.
The owner of the property shall occupy either the primary or secondary dwelling unit.
It says true now, but we're gonna leave it that way. We are leaving it that way? Okay, all right. So we're gonna be true, and then we're gonna be this mixed. Okay. That was it for me.
That's it?
That's it?
All right. Does anybody have anything else?
So we're not saying that the ADU is required to be owner occupied. We're just saying that the owner needs to be there.
Either or, it says.
Either or.
Either or.
There has to be an owner in one of the. Okay.
And that actually does happen where, an older family member who owns the property actually moves into the ADU. And other family members or others move into the larger unit. It definitely happens.
Yep.
So, but to summarize, we're not even saying a family member needs to be in the ADU.
He's gonna check on that.
That's right. Right now, we're saying it's either or,
Right.
but not both.
Which helps the workforce housing.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right?
Kind
To
of
make
thing,
it less
right.
little or less restricted.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So if I can summarize, I think the changes I have suggested so far are to 50702 purpose, where we would remove the word owner in the second sentence, so it's just providing the occupant. And in the last sentence, we would put a period after the word housing and get rid of the section for an owner occupant's family member or family caregiver. In 50703, the word accessory that you see here in red, we would just change to detached. And then in, let me back up here, 50704H, we would clarify here that attached, any required secondary access for attached units shall be from the side or rear of the primary structure. And then I think I am now down to 50706 under conditional use permits, and we are striking B, the 125% requirement. Those are the changes that I have so far.
Okay. Sound good?
And kind of as of last time, if we're comfortable with those changes and think this makes sense, then the next step would be to send it to a public hearing.
So I guess the question is, what is the will of the board? Do we want to send it to public hearing with those changes in mind?
I would make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, do we have discussion? All right, all those in favor of moving this to public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
On what
Aye.
date?
I'm sorry.
Public hearing on which date?
Public hearing will be held on the
19.
next meeting, 19th January. I'm sorry, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 600. Okay, great. Okay. Next item is committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Kim, anything from NRPs?
I do. Let me get my list here. I sent an email out this afternoon to review this. I don't know if you can see it there.
If anybody got that, I did see that in the email.
You did? Okay, let me do my first one. The Heritage Commission We'll meet next week, January 12th. It's a fully remote meeting, and you can find the link on the Town Hall website. The next NRP, National Regional Planning Commission meeting is March 17th at 7 PM. I'm not sure if that's fully remote, Jay, or not yet, or has been decided.
Still to be determined, I think, at this point.
Okay, but you can find the meeting details on the NRPC Nashua website. As far as NRPC is concerned, there's been a few things going on there. Let's see. Some of the commissioners at one of the meetings brought up if we could link on our town website, a link to the NRPC's website. I talked to John Brunel today. It's technically feasible. We used to do this. It used to be in a section called Doing Business in Litchfield, and he said that the links got a little stale or it's moved around a lot with the upgrades. But if the board wanted to do that, maybe when you can go into our website, you go to Town Department's Planning Board, we can have a link to NRPC, but he wants to know if that's what the board would like to do. Do you guys want to do that, or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
don't have any
okay.
problem with it.
Okay. I think the main thing we heard was not to link to specific articles, because they do move around on the web, but just get to the main NRPC website. Jay, feel free to jump in on this one as well. I saw one presentation on the Sohegan Valley Rail Trail.
Yes.
It goes from Route 101A. It goes from Nashua to Wilton. I sent 2 links. The first link just shows you a summary. I don't know if everybody has that link. Did you see the link or no?
Yes.
Okay. So you can, did you see, I'll see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is it's in progress. Actually, they have a meeting going on tonight about this. So it's about 16 miles of railroad going through, and people can use it for walking and running and horseback riding. And I guess there's some effort to buy up some of the old railroad sections if they can, to make this come to fruition.
Oh, just jumping in on that, the how is still a question mark. That line is called the Hillsborough branch, and it's owned now by Pan Am, and there's a proposed sale to CSX. So the real question is what's the interest of CSX? Do they want to see that restored as a viable freight line? In which case we'd be looking at rail with trail. If of course they're amenable to that, or are they, more interested in abandoning that line, in which case the thought would be, an actual rail trail conversion.
So if anybody wants to look forward to a 16-mile hike from Nashua to Merrimack, Milford and Wilton, hopefully it will be there at some point.
Right.
All right. This also came up. This was from a gentleman in Hollis. It's really a 3 to 5 year plan. He is looking into replacing diesel buses for the schools with electric buses. Currently, there's 480,000 school buses in the United States that run. That makes sense. You figure Litchfield probably has 20 or 30. Yeah, if you add it up, it is a lot of buses. He was looking at this as a public health issue with lowering emissions. 28 of the 50 states are having laws relating to carbon dioxide limits. I don't remember the statistic, Jay, but I thought he said a diesel engine had 50,000 or 5,000, parts, where you have an electric engine's 50 parts. So it's less expensive to buy, maintain. They're looking at renewables and solar power stations to charge the buses. And of course, you'd have to look at the other side of the equation of how many miles a gallon do these buses get, what's the battery life, and will it work in all weather?
Right.
And he's looking at working directly with towns that have buses that they run, or they might outsource their company, busing to like Bluebird or something, but you'd have to work with towns like that. So again,
Where was the gentleman from?
his name is, do you mind if I say his name?
No,
Or
I just wanted where he was from.
Hollis. Hollis, New Hampshire.
And what he's hoping to do is get a group together of interested, citizens and officials from the region, because the thinking is that if we work collectively, so many of us contract with the same, bus providers, that's really the sense of, can we work together to make this happen? And apparently NHDAS is also interested in working with anybody else who's interested. So if there's any interest out there, let me know, because we are going to try to pull together, a group of people to just kind of start the conversation.
I'm pretty sure we just bought new buses this year. So maybe in 10 years, 20 years.
Who just bought new buses? Was it Litchfield?
The school district, yeah. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
owned by the school, by the bus company and we're leasing them or something, but I'm pretty sure they're all like brand new buses.
I mean, his long-term goal is, you'll drop off the kids, you'll plug into a charging station with the solar panels on the school. It's a full circle kind of a thinking, but you have to start somewhere, right? And okay. This is another research item being worked on. A regional solution may be needed to replace the old fleet of solid waste facilities. They're running out of room, I believe, at some of the landfills. The machines that they're using for solid waste facilities are at their end of life process. New regulations are requiring minuscule emissions allowed for the new combustors. There's a need for new technology for incinerators and scrubbers. They are too expensive. This was from Nashua to do this alone, but maybe make it a regional or multi-town effort. And Jay, we also talked about recycling glass. I guess with the China not taking the glass bottles anymore, it's not cost effective.
Right.
We may not have a way to remove the glass or get it crushed like we used to in the past. I'm calling them glass grinder machines. I guess the byproduct of this broken glass was put in some of the pavement that we used. But I think there's a shortage of these glass grinding machines as well.
Yeah, and there's also the Northeast Resource Recovery Center, which is working to help communities recycle glass. And one of the markets that is out there are Canadian fiberglass producers. So that's another angle out there. But there's definitely a real effort to try to open up more markets and opportunities for glass. Recycling has been a real struggle for a lot of communities.
So again, NRPC is regionally, so we're talking about the regional issues, not just transportation and planning, but this as well.
Right.
Did Kate say something? I don't know if somebody wanted to
For
chime in.
once, no.
Oh, okay. And I did bring up the Pennachuck water rate hike increase there, so I'm not sure where we're standing in that in town at the moment.
We don't like it.
Huh?
We don't like it.
We don't like it. But we did have feedback from 3 members, which I passed along to Mr. LaSalle, so. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Conservation met last night here in Town Hall. We did not have a Lower Merrimack, Lower River Local Advisory Committee meeting yet. I don't think we have any upcoming meetings thus far, although that may change. The Capital Improvement Committee is going to meet on January 18th here in Town Hall, and virtual at 7 p.m. To discuss the capital improvement plan for 2021. And that's all I have. Joan, did you want to say anything about, I don't know if you know anything about the budget for the planning board? I know it was listed here. I know it
No,
was,
that I think I had just enclosed.
you just enclosed it. Okay. So if anyone wants to take a look at that, they can. The Hudson Logistics Center, well, actually, that's under any other business. Let me go to approved minutes of 12/15/2020. Do anybody have an opportunity to look at the minutes for the last meeting we had? And are there any questions or issues? If not, we can entertain a motion to approve them if you want. So desire.
So moved.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Discussion. All those signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstain, motion passes six.
Was that Ron or James?
I think it was Ron.
That was me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay.
Motion passes 600. Okay. Any other business? I know under correspondence, I did send another letter. We talked about this last time.
And I put, all of your letters are on.
Yes, they're all on, I guess, the site. If you want to take a look at them, if you're welcome to. This was actually one to the developer. The last letter that we sent was to the Hudson Planning Board. And we CC'd the Hudson Planning Board on this one. And basically, again, regarding the issue of traffic, do they see any impacts to traffic in Litchfield? You know, what we would like to see Hudson Planning Board when they're looking at this project, how they should approach it or encouraged to approach it. So I did that, and I had sent it around to everybody for comments and stuff, and Jay looked at it, and so that's all I have on that.
I'm not sure if they had another meeting or not, but they didn't have the video up on their website, so I haven't at least had the chance to look at any minutes or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll double check their schedule. I don't believe they have had another meeting since the last one that we noted, but I'll double check. And if there's anything out there, I'll send it around to everybody.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sounds good. All right. Does anybody have anything else that they want to talk about this evening? You know, talk about Christmas and everyone get their gifts they wanted?
We are having, Conservation is having a site walk this Saturday
yes.
on the proposed gas station site. We're specifically looking at impacts to the wetland buffers up on, it's 522 Charles Bancroft, I believe.
Right.
What time is that? What time was that, John?
What is it? What time is it, John?
10 o'clock
10
Saturday.
o'clock.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that at some point will be coming before us. So FYI. I have nothing else. I don't think there's anything else that I have on the agenda. Jay, do you have anything that you want to add?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Joan, you're good?
I'm good.
Okay. So I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a second discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Bye.
Those opposed, abstain, motion passes 600. Thank you, everybody. Good to see all of you again. Happy New Year, and
Good night.
Here.
all right, take care.
All right.
Thank you, John.
Bye-bye.